To the You're listening to Paranormal Now with Alan B. Smith, rebroadcast on the UNX network Thursdays at 11 p.m. Pacific, Fridays at 2 a.m. Eastern.
However you are and whenever you are, welcome good souls to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Join us as we traverse the cosmic highway of paranormal portals and tantalizing turnoffs. Thank you so much for joining us once again. We have a fantastic guest tonight. Joining me is Sarah Breskman Cosme, and we are going to go back in time. This is a past life regression episode. I can't remember the last time I did an episode specifically about this. Arguably not ever in 6 years. So this is a really fun night for me, and I'm sure you're going to have a fantastic time with our guest tonight. And Sarah is the author of A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis, and she's the author of A Hypnotist's Journey to the Secrets of the Sphinx. Are you picking up a theme here? And when I chat to Sarah too, in just a moment, I do want to ask her about climate change and catastrophes and all these things that are going on, biblical scale catastrophes. And in past life regression, has she been able to garner any information that may be beneficial to us now, to give us a little insight into what's going on? I mean, it's nuts. Even around here in the Hudson Valley, granted, very grateful we don't have the same issues as other places right now. I mean, look at Las Vegas. But we've been having a drought, and every time, and this just happened the other day, the weather app said literally 100% rain, and it didn't come. And we could see clouds out in the distance. We can see clouds this way, and the rain just didn't come. So I'm wondering if there's some other way to kind of get a better understanding of what's going on here. And that's not to say a non-scientific understanding, but history always has something to teach us. Okay, and as always, I am a lover of coffee, and if you too are a lover of coffee, and you want to support Alien Coffee Bean, go to aliencoffeebean.com, and you can put in the Paranormal Now discount code. That's a 20% off. It's mystery 20. That's mystery, all caps, 20. And they ship anywhere in the US, and you can get just gorgeous, really, really delicious whole bean roast coffee. And we typically ground it up, the darker roasts in particular, and make espresso out of it, or like a long Americano, like I have going on tonight. All right, and as always, we are continuing to grow. So if you want to help support this show and the Mystic Lounge YouTube channel, please go to youtube.com/Mystic Lounge, subscribe, like, and definitely click that notification bell. It makes a huge difference, because when we go live unexpectedly, or even when we schedule a live show, oftentimes people aren't getting the notification. So if you don't want to miss out, please click the notification bell. All right, so we're going to go right to our guest of time slips in history, Sarah Breskman Cosme. She is the best-selling author of A Hypnotist's Journey to Atlantis and the author of A Hypnotist's Journey to the Secrets of the Sphinx. Sarah is a master hypnotist, a level 3 practitioner of Dolores Cannon's QHHT, and a student of Dr. Brian Weiss, with a passion to reveal hidden or undiscovered knowledge vital to the enlightenment of humanity. Sarah continues to speak about her work worldwide. Sarah earned her bachelor's in psychology at Northeastern University in Boston, Massachusetts. After graduation, she worked as a counselor in a halfway house for the mentally ill. Quote, I saw firsthand how the conventional treatment for the mentally ill with medication and talk therapy was not always effective, and I wished that there was something more that I could offer my clients. As a result, Sarah pursued hypnotherapy, a therapy which uses the subconscious mind to change limiting beliefs and unwanted behavior. That's a challenge we all have. It's that subconscious programming that begins, from early childhood. Sara became a master hypnotist in 2009, after which she trained with Dr. Brian Weiss to be a certified past life regressionist. That's right, you can get certified to be a past life regressionist. We'll hear more about that from Sara in just a moment. From here, Sara went on to train with Dolores Cannon's daughter, Julia Cannon, learning her specialized method called quantum healing hypnosis technique. After many years of dedication and receiving the coveted level 3 practitioner status, Sara now assists in teaching with Dolores Cannon's daughter, Julia, all over the world. Her website is theholistichypnotist.com, and I'll just drop that in the comments in just a moment. Sara, welcome.
For having me. Oh, good. I'm not muted.
You're good. Yeah, thank you for being on here. I'm really excited about this topic in this episode. But you have to tell me, this is definitely what I would consider supernatural. The act of being able to go into a past life, and just the very idea that there's a past life that we can connect to. How did you come to a place outside of your therapy work to even accept that such a thing is even plausible?
Honestly, it took me a really long time. I didn't believe it at first because I had such a different background. I came from such a scientific background, and my goal at first was to become a psychologist. So all of this stuff it took a while to really seep in. I mean, it took so many times over and over and over again till I started to finally believe it. But I think what really helped me start to believe that these things were real was the healing that my clients would experience. Sometimes my clients would come in and they would completely heal everything after just one session, whereas other methods just didn't seem to work as well as that. And I knew there was something about these past life regressions that actually helped people.
Did you have your own past life regression, and was that the Kickstarter for this, or was that later in the?
No, that was much, much later.
Really?
Yeah.
How long did you wait? Because I would have been like, okay, let's do it now. Right?
I know. I waited a really long time. I really just had this desire to help other people because I had always had so many problems myself. I mean, I had so many problems as a kid. Like, I was one of those people that everybody just felt sorry for. They were like, oh, poor girl,
Sorry, because of just outside problems?
Outside, inside, I just was such a problem child, but really I was just so super sensitive.
Wait, what do you mean problem child? Because when we say problem child, that indicates certain behaviors.
I was overweight. I had a lot of phobias and fears. I had OCD. And my teachers would always tell my parents, I think she should probably go see somebody kind of thing, because I just had so many different issues that were visible to other people when I was a child. And so that's how I essentially got into all of this stuff, because my parents took me to regular therapy. And in therapy, I learned a lot about therapy, and I thought, well, that's what I'm going to be when I grow older.
Yeah. I understand the therapy of past life regression, and you're saying how powerful that is, but it seems like from my experience, regret and shame is a huge weight and a huge burden that prevents one from healing and even just becoming a better person. So did you have that same experience?
I did. Well, when you said that just now, it made me think about countless clients that's one of their major problems. That's one of the reasons they develop some body issues is because of the regret, shame, or even guilt. I mean, so oftentimes, speaking of guilt, I'll have a lot of women that have different cysts, like ovarian cysts or even uterine cancer. And sometimes it comes from either guilt from not having a child or guilt from having an abortion. But once they look inwards and they find out that they don't need to feel guilty about any decision that they made, they can release this guilt, essentially.
So recently, there's been a lot of research done with certain psychedelics, and I hear a similar feedback from these therapists that after 1 or 2 sessions, people are like having huge transformations and revelations internally. Is that what it's like on these past life regressions?
I'm not really sure what it's like, but from what I've heard with the ancients that were living in Lemuria, or places of those ancient places, they often use psychedelics. And I know people use those today to go inwards and to really find out more about themselves. But apparently, those medications are oftentimes somewhat alive in spirit, and they can help a person greatly.
That's super controversial, right?
Oh,
Like because if you talk to anybody in medicine, or even myself, like if I went to the doctor and doctor was like, I will, clear this up with the power of the spirit. Well, people have been saying that for a long time. I mean, I think of someone like Andy Kaufman, right? Like he went down to, I think it was Mexico, because he thought someone would cure his cancer, only to find out that the person was kind of a charlatan. And but because there's something so attractive about that, not just because one can heal, but the idea that there's another level to reality, that is so powerful. So I have to go back. You said Lemurians. So were these shamans in Lemuria, and how are you even aware of them?
well, it all started for me when I regressed one of my friends
Hmm.
named Jen because I needed a subject to regress to take this video submission to a class I wanted to take. And
Hmm.
so I had to find somebody really quickly to use as my hypnosis subject. And so I asked,
That's what a good friend is for.
right? So I asked my friend Jen, but the amazing thing about Jen was that I knew that she wasn't into any of this stuff. So as soon as I asked her, I instantly regretted it. I just had that sinking feeling like, why did I ask her? I could have asked one of
Hmm.
my, spiritual friends or somebody open to all of this stuff. Then I knew that she wasn't into this stuff because we sat on the playground for
Hmm.
many, many years together talking about different things. And I would try to bring up spirituality, and I knew she just wasn't into any of this stuff. So when I asked her, I thought, oh my gosh, she's going to think I'm crazy because I told her it's past life regression. You can find out about yourself and you can even heal your body if you have any issues. And she looked at me in surprise and she said, that's what you do? Because I haven't told anybody from the school, but I have this brain condition and it's called pseudotumor cerebri. And basically, it's causing all kinds of issues in my body. And I'm working really closely with this team of specialists at the University of Miami. And they
Hmm.
said, I'm sorry, there's no hope for you, but you can be on this heavy duty medication. So she said, I will
I see.
definitely be your subject. And so she was very excited to try out this new method that she had never heard about. So when I first regressed her, she went back to this other lifetime in this place that we learned was called Lemuria, and she learned she was part of the ruling family. Now it was a matriarchal society. Granted, this is somebody who has no knowledge of this place.
Hmm.
She didn't believe in Atlantis, didn't believe in extraterrestrials. She was one of those friends,
Yeah.
those friends that
Yeah.
you're like,
It's always
oh,
good to have
there,
that, though.
yeah,
Yeah.
there might be life after this one. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
Though one of those people. And here she goes, her first session, she goes back in her memories to this time
Hmm.
where she lived in this beautiful society called, well, that we learned was called Lemuria, but her people called it Amun. And so
Aman. Okay.
Amun,
Is there a meaning behind that word, Aman?
that was just a name that we found. It took a while.
Uh-huh.
It's hard to get names because that's not, it's just a different language for a lot of these for
Sure.
these societies. So it's hard to translate the names and words. But she called it Aman. So
Hmm.
that's what we started to call it. And we learned that that was Lemuria. It was in the South Pacific.
In the South Pacific. Okay. And so when she was telling you about what she had seen, did it match with what you had already been familiar with about, what Lemuria is supposed to be?
At the time, I didn't really know much about Lemuria. I didn't
Okay.
really know much about Lemuria or Atlantis. I had heard of these places. I had had past lives where clients went back to these places, but it wasn't something that I was very familiar with. I
Mhm.
really was still kind of a newcomer in all of this. I would definitely say I was not an expert at any of these places whatsoever.
So you didn't have
Uh,
mountains of Lemuria books in your
No,
library? Like, okay.
no.
Well, but that's what's important, right? I think if you want someone to believe that past lives regression is a real thing, because is does it correspond with other reports?
So,
Or can I corroborate this in any other way?
so as I was working with Jed, well, I'll tell you what happened. So after
Okay.
our first session,
Hmm.
and during this session, this is why all these tools are so great if you want to heal your body. And you don't even need hypnosis really to do this. It's just a process of going inwards and finding out what's really going on with yourself and listening to your body.
Okay.
But as she was deep under hypnosis, I asked what the purpose of her pseudotumor cerebri was. And they said the purpose was for her to come see me, was to bring the both of us together,
Hmm.
and that the reason she had this was so that it would be the catalyst for us uncovering this ancient information that has been buried in her subconscious for thousands of years, because it's so important to share with the world now.
Hmm.
So they wanted us to work together. When she went
So, oh no, go ahead.
Oh, so after our first session,
Hmm.
she went back to her team of specialists because she noticed something right away. Right after her session, she felt as if this tumor was draining. She could feel something was happening, and she had to get scans regularly. So she went back to the University of Miami, and she was healed. And they said they didn't understand what happened. How was that possible? Because they said it must be a medical miracle, because they didn't have any
Sure.
explanation for it. But as we started getting together and working on this information that we were supposed to share with the world, this weird phenomenon started happening in my office. And that's when things started to get weird, because
What weird phenomena?
people that didn't know one another,
Uh-huh.
that didn't know about Atlantis and Lemuria, started coming in for sessions just out of, regular clients, but they would be regressed back to these ancient time periods. And so at first I thought it was a really strange coincidence.
Yeah.
And I asked all my other friends that also do this method if they just kept having session after session people that would regress back to Atlantis or Lemuria. Like, is this just normal? And everybody said, no, this is not normal. And then I started to realize, oh, it's for a reason. I'm supposed to share it. See, I'm like, I was born a skeptic. It has to be just completely proven to me to believe it. But I started to understand that I was supposed to share this information.
You were supposed to share it, and do you know why now?
Yes, because the information is so important, because we're hitting a level in our evolution where this information needs to be known by people. And we need to understand the truth about our history and our past and who we really are. And
Hmm.
so as Jen and I started to uncover this information that her subconscious said that we needed to share, I asked for them to start. I call them them, but what I mean by the subconscious is the universal collective, because
Sure.
anybody, when they just basically go into themselves, they connect to everything, to
Hmm.
everyone, because in a sense we're all one. So when a person is deep under hypnosis, they can connect to universal consciousness.
Yeah.
And the universal consciousness said that they wanted us to start from the beginning. So I asked, okay, take us to the beginning, thinking that they were going to take us back to her lifetime in Lemuria, and we would learn about her childhood and
Hmm.
start from there, and then learn all about, the rest that was to come. But no, her subconscious and the universal consciousness didn't want us to start there whatsoever. They brought her back to a memory where she was an extraterrestrial crash landing on Earth for the very first time. They wanted to share with us why the extraterrestrials came to see the planet, what was happening with their planet.
And how long ago was this?
So I really don't know in the aspect of time, because it seems as if as they were saying to me, that time is so cyclical. It's like a figure eight. It's always ebbing and flowing, and everywhere else except for us on this first physical reality, there is no such thing as time. So everything in the rest of the universe is happening in this now moment. I know it gets so confusing.
Well, it kind of does, but I think of Christopher Nolan's Interstellar, and I think he does a pretty good job of helping to illustrate the idea of what like a fifth dimension, consciousness would be. And, this is based on real physics, and the time wouldn't necessarily matter to them, and what are we in? We're in the fourth dimension. So, and string theory says, well, there could be 11 dimensions. It, it's amazing to me, and I keep hearing reports, whether it's from past life regression or I'm sure you're familiar with the work of Lynn McTaggart.
I actually don't know. I actually don't know anybody else's work. I've never read
really?
Edgar Casey, or I don't know who Chris is.
Okay. All right. Well, Lynn McTaggart, she wrote a book called The Field. And it was, a journalistic book, but interviewing people like yourself and all these other people. And she came to the conclusion that there is something in scientists, that there's a substrate, there's a field, a matrix, if you will, that ties everything together. And I'm with you. I feel like it's all information. Like the entire universe it's information. So there must be various ways of getting it, and past life regression is one of them. Have you tried any other way besides past life regression?
As far as getting the information?
Yeah, tapping into that consciousness or Akashic records or whatever it is.
Well, I do know that we're being contacted constantly, and that, one really easy way to get in touch with yourself and get this access to this information is just to simply ask and listen for the very first thought that pops into your mind. Another
That's
way.
simple.
It's that simple. But another really, really easy
Yeah.
trick that I learned through doing all these regressions is that the ancient symbols are coded. They're like keys, almost like a key that goes into a lock, like the flower of life symbol. So if you have a question and you want to access some ancient or valuable knowledge for yourself, even, you just stare at the symbol, and what it's doing is it's unlocking something within your mind, and it opens transmission for these higher consciousness to be able to communicate with you. That's what they're actually there for, according to people under hypnosis.
Yeah, someone recently, a prominent figure, said something like, art really isn't that big of a deal. It doesn't really change much, and it's so not true. The power of symbolism. I think what happens is with age, people get a little bit more cynical, and they forget those original impressions. Like I remember, like looking at a textbook in middle school, and looking at these art paintings like the Mona Lisa, and why did it stick in my brain? Why did it burn in there, right? Like, why do you remember that image? And it's a powerful form of communication. And oftentimes with psychedelics, that's what that's a kind of communication people have. It's a visual one. So now when someone's going back and they're finding themselves in that Lemuria of long gone past, is it a sensation? Are they seeing images? What does that look like through their eyes?
I would usually know where they were because they would describe this calm coastline. They would always describe the people as being so compassionate. They would describe these smooth pebbles in the water. They would describe the same, types of houses. They would describe, the same places, the same smell. It was like a really pungent jasmine smell, and the birds would make this noise, and it was just so beautiful. And it was a matriarchy, so the women were the natural rulers, because back in that time the women could pass down knowledge instinctually. They didn't have to teach it from mother to daughter. It was something you were born with. You were born with this very special knowledge, And women were the holders of this knowledge. And so they knew which plant would kill you, which plant you could use for psychedelics, which plant you could use as medicine. And it was such a valuable, important knowledge that that's why they were the natural leaders at the time.
That's interesting because mammals do that, animals do that, maybe on a more, basic level, but a cat, for the most part, knows what not to eat, not what plants not to nibble on, and so they don't need necessarily to be taught how to survive. They can learn, they can figure it out how to survive. That's information that's clearly passed down genetically. So is that what you're saying? It's kind of like that?
Yes, that's the way it was. That's what is coming back, essentially.
Do you think we're gonna get to that point?
Oh, definitely. Every time these higher consciousness come through my clients, every time, without a doubt, they're always very excited for us. It's not something you would hear on TV or anything like that, but these higher consciousness are constantly saying that humans will actually become liberated, will actually become what they're really supposed to be on this planet. And that this is an exciting time.
It sounds like an exciting time. I hope so. We really need
some
hope.
I know.
We'll find out more about this exciting time and more details about Lemuria when we come back on the other side of this break with Sarah Breskman Cosme. Really interesting conversation. And hang in there with us because it's only going to get more exciting. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on the Mystic Lounge YouTube channel and rebroadcast on the UNX network at 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll see you on the flip side.
Tell me why, with 12 sides, the odds are that we die, roll the die. As you hide, I can't find you on the other side of the line.
This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth?
Do you have an interest in the paranormal? Then you'll love the unxnetwork.com. The X is your streaming audio and video for everything supernatural, strange, and mysterious, like UFOs, Bigfoot, ghosts, and so much more. From hosts like Jimmy Church, Whitley Strieber, Micah Hanks, and Christina Gomez. Visit the unxnetwork.com show page for a complete list of all the paranormal programs you'll find on the X. Be sure to follow us on Twitter for updates at KUNXDB. Follow our Facebook group, UNX Network. Find the podcast on Spotify, iHeart, Audible, and Apple Podcast. It's time. It's new. It's the X.
On and again, the signs keep on coming, they point to the end, but I hold on so tight.
Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith, your most grateful host. Music taking us out of the break tonight is by Septembrio. If you like Septembrio's music, you can check them out at Septembrio, spelled with a Y.com. With me is Sarah Breskman Cosme. Sarah, am I saying your last name correctly?
Yeah, good job.
Okay, good. I usually make an effort, but I had a guest on, I guess a month and a half ago, and I just kept saying the name wrong, even though I knew I was saying it wrong. That was really
Well,
frustrating.
you know, my friends call me Sarah Breskman Cosmonaut. So, yeah.
That's funny. Well, you kind of, yeah, you kind
Right?
of are. Before we continue on with Lemuria, because I really am, I want to hear more about this place and the philosophy and what people were like, what were they wearing. But I am curious, in your past life regression work, have you learned anything about weather phenomena or climate extremes or anything like that we can maybe, I don't know, garner some wisdom from?
I mean, people have asked questions about what is actually going on with different technology. Is that what you're curious about?
Yeah, I mean, did it happen in the past? Were there
Oh, okay.
solutions?
There were
Um,
there were
yeah.
so it seems like there were so many different cataclysms, so many different resets basically to a civilization. But what I've been hearing recently is that this time is so special because we don't need a reset. That this is the time it's so chaotic because normally we would have a reset, but this is the time where we actually move past this in our evolutionary phase. So
What? Yeah.
I've been
If
hearing, yeah.
Well, I was going to say, if Lemuria or Atlantis were these wonderful places, why did they need a reset? Why couldn't they sustain?
I know. So I would ask that question all the time. And the
Hmm.
answer I always received was because they were out of balance. There was one side, the Lemurians were very heavy in their divine feminine, and the Atlantians in the masculine, and they were out of balance. The two were supposed to come together and find balance, but that never happened.
Two were supposed to come together.
They were supposed to come together, and it wasn't supposed to end like the way there were choices, there were different
Yeah.
potentials. So the two were supposed to come together. But everybody, it's like the Mandela effect. There are many people that have different memories, but I was supposed to report on the memories that my clients had. So I
Okay.
know that some people have different memories of these cataclysms.
Yeah.
And for some people, they didn't even occur at all, which is really fascinating. But for the Lemurians, they were destroyed with atomic-like devices placed in rifts that caused these massive tsunamis that totally sunk the entire island, according to many of my clients.
So Atlantis and Lemuria were existing contemporaneously.
That's the information that I received through my clients, that they were
So
not separate. There was one big continent that was Lemuria and one big continent that was Atlantis. That's
okay.
the information that I received, although it is my understanding that they lasted, both of them, for thousands and thousands of years.
Okay. Do you know which one ended first?
Yes, Lemuria ended first.
Okay. And they used nuclear weapons? That they had that kind of a technology?
So the founder of Atlantis was an extraterrestrial who crash landed his ship on Earth. And he was able to salvage some of the technology and create one of those, in Stonehenge, those stone structures, they used to be these ancient transport devices, and they were set up all over the earth and they would be able to use the stone structures and make sort of like a vortex. So it would open automatically during the equinoxes. But they could use special crystal technology to go through these stone circles, and it would bring them to a different part in the earth. That was just an ancient transport device. That's how they set these stone circles up, according to clients. And so he was able to go through one of these stone circles. And when he did, he went to where Atlantis would be. And he found some leftover technology by some earlier extraterrestrials who had left it there from a previous large incarnation.
What? So there are separate incarnations of extraterrestrials.
I mean, another group of extraterrestrials
Another group
that had come to be on that place that's called Atlantis earlier in time.
And it was the same Same civilization, species?
No, it was a different species. It
Okay.
was a different set of extraterrestrials. According to clients, the last founder of
Mhm.
Atlantis was from the Pleiades.
So some Atlantean researchers believe that Atlantis was, formed. It could have been, 12,000, 13,000 years ago, something like that. Um,
Oh gosh, I
so
would say it's probably 25,000 years
plus,
ago.
but
Plus,
even then, humans were here.
yeah,
Homo sapiens sapien existed.
exactly.
So what did they like? How did that work? Because in Plato's account, you wouldn't get the sense that they were extraterrestrials. They just sound like people.
Right. Well, according to my clients, this extraterrestrial wanted to get back home, but he couldn't. He didn't have enough technology, and he didn't have any technology that worked well enough for him to radio back home. And
Mhm.
apparently, Earth is on the outskirts of this big solar system. So it was too far away for him to contact any of his people. And so he wanted to recreate something that he had on his home planet. So he used the humans that he saw that were already existing, who had been
Mhm.
freed for thousands and thousands of years and had a beautiful society. And he created human hybrid slaves. And he then created what would
Uh-huh.
be Atlantis, but he did so in a very specific design. And that design is what other people also remember on other planets. This wasn't just a design out of the blue that he came up with. This was a very specific design. He knew how to build this type of design because that was one of the reasons why he came to Earth in the first place, as part of the group that was seeding the population.
Does this tie into Zacharias Sitchin's work?
I don't really know anybody else's
Okay.
stuff. I'm sorry. I'll have
No,
to
that's
check
all
him
right.
out.
No, I mean, I guess there's a kind of purity to that.
Well, all
Because
his stuff I get
you're
is by accident,
yeah, I mean,
basically.
and then you're not necessarily contaminated. Not that you
Right.
would be, but to use that word loosely, you're not contaminated by another person's theory. Eh, So this alien you referred to as a male, do we know? Does your client really believe it's a male, like biologically a male?
That's a really good question. Every time she referred to this being, she always called it a he. So that's a really good question. That's something that I would love to ask more of, because it seems as if when you're on this other planet or
Mhm.
any being from the Pleiades, they're very androgynous. They don't have births the way we do. They use a very specific type of in vitro fertilization where they create these beings
Mhm.
genetically, and then it's not born of a person, basically.
Are they not intimate themselves at all, or
They are. I've asked
or
that
okay?
question. I was like, look, do Pleiadians have sex? And they were like, yes, they do, but it's different.
The question on
I
everyone's
had
mind
to
in
ask.
America.
I had
Yeah.
to ask. I mean, but
What's
they
on your
do.
mind? Do Pleiadians have sex?
I'm sorry. I'm just so curious. I
No,
had to
no.
ask.
I mean,
And
let's be honest. It's a very natural question to ask. I think a lot of people wouldn't,
they
but
do.
yeah.
They
So,
do, but it's
so
different.
okay, but that's the thing. Then, if they're an intimate society, they come. This person is stranded here. This alien creates a slave race, and then eventually, the society becomes a kind of a utopia. So how do we go from stranded, enslaving individuals,
I did not,
genetic manipulation, and then a utopia?
I never got any information about Atlantis being a utopia. I know other people have. And what
Ah,
I'm gathering is
interesting.
that may have been before this last founder, because all my clients that would come to me would describe Atlantis the same way, as a very elite few running,
Hmm.
basically in charge of the whole population. There were slaves that would be on the outermost ring. So there were
Yeah,
rings
yeah,
within
right.
Atlantis. There was an inner ring, which was the people that were the most wealthy. and then the middle ring, the middle class, and the outer ring would be like slaves or lower class people. They had a very distinct class system, according to my clients. They would describe these, it was very scientific, very advanced with their technology, but it didn't seem at the time, or where my clients would come to me talking about a utopia whatsoever, although I believe it was before.
Well, that's really interesting, because if Atlantis, if the how the history is written by those who are in power, and maybe this myth of a society that was at this apex of balance and civilization was written by those in power and is therefore highly flawed. Although now part of what people consider it as a parable, like Plato's parable, is that they eventually became arrogant and self-serving, and Tolkien uses this in his works too. That's what was their downfall.
That is what I've heard was their downfall, because it was an unbalanced society. According to a lot of my clients, they were very judgmental in every aspect. They were judgmental of how they looked. According to my clients, they were very like white in their appearance, very blue-eyed, very Aryan race, and they felt superior to one another. And this was towards the end of times when things started to get out of control, really. There were so many experiments that went wrong, so many issues that they had with a lot of illness on their island. And that's really what was their ultimate downfall, was they were not able to balance themselves.
So this whole myth could be a lie then, based on what your clients are telling you.
I only know what my clients have told me, and I did not hear about Atlantis being a utopia. From them. Although it seemed like it was a beautiful place before the founder got there, where they actually communicated with mermaids, not, mer people. They're more fish-like, but they did trades. They were very free.
Wait, did you just say mermaids?
Yeah, I know. It sounds so crazy.
So is that part of the genetic splicing that occurred? Is that
so? According to my clients, when the seeding of the population occurred, they wanted to test. We're all the same. We're all ultimately all part of this, group. All of us, even if we're in the human form. But they wanted to test different types of humans. So they put humans in the water, this mer people. They made giant humans. They made regular humans, and they just tried lots of different things as an experiment. And the mer people didn't do quite as well.
Well, it reminds me of Waterworld. I don't know if you ever saw that movie with Kevin Costner.
I did. Yeah.
Where he has these kind of like little webbed feet, I think, and these little tiny gills, I think it was, if I remember correctly, where so he can breathe underwater for a longer period of time. And to me, it actually doesn't seem that far of a stretch when you look at something like Waterworld, mer person, right? Because it wasn't, with fish scales and the tail and all that. It was just like these modifications that looked just natural in a way. And I wonder genetically if we're going to go that route. And so if your clients are saying like this is the transformation time, would that be a negative side effect of transformation? Would people say, we can promise you the next level of human being, and would that all go awry?
Right. Wow.
Again.
Yeah. I never thought about that, but that's so fascinating. But lots of my clients remember being a mermaid. I've had countless clients who don't know one another, who didn't believe in mermaids before.
So we're talking tails, like
we're talking tails, yeah.
Tails.
And they would have tails, but be very be human-like. And according to clients, they still live in the oceans miles deep today. They travel in pods. They use echolocation, and they communicate like porpoises. That's according to my clients, and I've had multiple clients recount lifetimes as a mer person. It's so interesting.
Well, how do you know you can trust your clients? Like, how do you know that? Okay.
I don't. The way I go about it is just if multiple people say the same thing, because I'm very curious and I want to know for myself too. So I don't use anything that I can't really back up with another client.
Yeah.
Or if the way I really try to keep things valid is I try, first of all, I don't look at anybody else's information, but I also try to only use clients for my books and things like that who don't know any of this stuff consciously, because I don't know if I would be able to trust the information otherwise. Like if Jen had known a lot about Lemuria or Atlantis and she came in for a session, I would have a lot of trouble, trusting that information, because she could have just heard it. She could just repeat it. So that's how I try to go about validating it. But of course, there's things such as false memory. People can have false memory. So the way I test that is I'll ask the same questions over and over again. I'll have them recite the same story. And if there's no flaws and it's exactly the same, then I usually can trust that it's not false memory. Those are the little things I do.
Yeah, I mean, those are investigative techniques. I mean, it's like when someone says they had an alien abduction or, an encounter, then, there are ways of asking questions, to verify whether you think that they're telling the truth or it's a concocted story. And also, you have to see, are they interested in UFOs already? Do they have DVDs? Do they have books? Because all that can be a factor. It doesn't mean an encounter didn't happen, but it does kind of muddy the water a little bit, because our brains we're imaginative species, and so if you're having this highly strange event, or in your case, past life regression, I can easily see how you would kind of intermix your own experiences and knowledge into it. So how for Sarah, I'm sure you've had more than one at this point, right?
Oh, strange
past life regression.
Oh yes. Yeah. Now I do it all the time.
Really?
Yeah. Whenever my friends and I get together, I always learn so much.
That's so funny. It's like, let's hang out and go past life regressioning.
You hang out with hypnotists. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have a setting? Do you have like an intention when you do these sort of things?
No. I don't. I just let the higher self or the subconscious take me where I'm supposed to go, really, because that way I can really find out whatever. And plus, I'm deep under hypnosis, so I don't really know what their agenda is. But I do find it really comforting that there's this power within us all that's kind of running the show, that our conscious mind thinks we're the ones in control, but really we're not. It's this huge power that we have in each one of us that's actually running everything. That's like the one in charge.
Does that mean we don't have free will?
No, we have free will. I guess it's different than that. It's like we tap into all of ourselves when we go inwards.
Okay.
If that makes more sense.
No, it does. Yeah. Like, because I've had that experience too of just like, it's all one. Like it's literally all connected.
Right.
And then we're kind of just parts of this whole. So Lemuria.
Yeah.
Was this a very highly technical society? Because like we mentioned before, you said that they destroyed themselves using nuclear explode bombs. Is that what it was?
Well, according to my clients, they didn't destroy themselves. They were a beautiful society and they were very advanced spiritually. They weren't advanced with their technology because the founder of Lemuria did not have any technology. The founder of Lemuria only had a few crystals from the ship that they crashed in. So they used those crystals in Lemuria, and they never lost those crystals. And through those crystals, they could communicate with their home planet and they could receive information. And so they were advanced spiritually. They understood their spiritual connection to the cosmos and things like that.
So then who was the wrongdoing?
So according to my client, the Atlantians were suffering from a very deadly illness on their continent because they were doing multiple experiments with DNA and animal DNA, so many different experiments, and there were so many different illnesses, and they were looking for different cures, and they noticed that the Lemurians had some sort of immunity. Because I always wondered, what would the Atlanteans want from the Lemurians? Why would this advanced society want anything from this society that wasn't advanced in their technology? It didn't really quite make sense. But what I found out was that the Atlanteans understood that the Lemurians had this immunity, and they wanted this immunity because they wanted to fix the issue on their continent. So they showed up all of a sudden on the continent of Lemuria. They came in these like really stealth looking crafts. They were like, they had really advanced technology, and these stealth crafts were such that they could see, the Atlanteans could see out, but the Lemurians couldn't see the crafts. It's similar to, UFO technology. And they came down and they started asking questions about their immunity. But the Lemurians told them, look, we can't give you this immunity. This was a gift from the star people. We don't have any way of giving you this immunity that we have, and we can't give you our crystals. And so, go ahead.
Well, so the immunity, which sounds like it's a genetic.
They placed these red crystals in special grids that created this special immunity within Lemuria. So people would have issues with, childbirth or pain, but nobody would get an illness or something like that. It was quite different on their continent because of the special immunity that they had.
Okay, so it was a finite resource that they used for themselves, and they couldn't just give it away because then they wouldn't have it.
Exactly. They wouldn't have it. And they also couldn't part with their special crystals.
And the Atlanteans decided
that they started to get really nasty after a while. They acted as if they were their friends at first, and they said, let's work together. But the Lemurians said, I'm sorry, we can't give you this. We can't do that. And so they took somebody as a prisoner, and then they destroyed the whole continent, as they said they would if they didn't get what they wanted.
So they threatened them. They didn't get what they wanted, and they
destroyed
went through with their threat.
Yeah.
But it just seems, did they get any understanding of what they hoped to get out of that?
What they hoped to get out of?
Yeah, what did the Atlanteans hope to get out of? Okay, fine, they didn't give you the tech, but by blowing them up, I mean, it doesn't help anyone anyway.
Yeah, I know. They took the princess as a prisoner to try to get her to communicate with them what this immunity was. So they took her to their continent, and they did multiple tests, all kinds of really advanced tests on her to try to find out how she was able to access this immunity, because they couldn't figure it out. That's what they wanted. They wanted to see how she communicated with these crystals too. And it was something she never divulged to them.
Why didn't they just try a crystal heist?
I know, right?
Just go after the crystals. Jeez, those sink a continent.
They had some on their continent, but they didn't know how to use it. It wasn't something that they remembered how to use either, because they had just advanced so far in their technology, and they had forgotten really how to communicate with these crystals. They didn't really know. They didn't know what it was. And also, they didn't have the kind of communication that some of the Lemurians did, because some of the Lemurians were born with a special blood type in which they were able to carry this information. They were able to tap into the crystals, the Rh negative blood type.
Okay. So there was some sort of ability on the genetic level that would resonate with the crystals. Okay, but they didn't know exactly how it worked, so they couldn't explain it to the Atlanteans.
Yeah, exactly. They couldn't explain it to the Atlanteans.
Okay, and then the Atlanteans had their own crystals. I guess what happened to the crystals that the Atlanteans had?
They had those crystals. They just didn't know how to use them. They only had a few left, and they were pretty much worthless. They didn't really know what to do with them. They couldn't read them. They couldn't communicate with their home planet.
When we say crystals, what does that look like?
So according to them, they were red. They were red. They looked like a dull red gemstone. And these crystals were very special. They were found on the earth. They had to be found. You couldn't just take them from one place to another. They had to be found on the earth. But they were very special to this grouping of extraterrestrials because they would use them. They had some on their home planet. They had many, but they used them for a very specific purpose. And it was something they ultimately did not want to lose, because what they would do was they would create this big vortex using these crystals. And everyone in their society had to go into this vortex. And in this vortex, they would learn the secrets of the universe. And when you would do that, then you would understand that you're no different than anybody else. And it would save the whole society on this planet from having competitions with one another. So everyone would have to go through this vortex. And basically, it would shock sense into you almost. And you would come in and you would go out, but you would never be the same when you would go out. Of course, I was curious. I was like, what do you learn in this vortex? And apparently, you learn that life is just a game, and that this game has been going on longer than anybody can comprehend in the aspect of time. And that we're truly just this grouping of ancient beings that travel from planet to planet to see what the next experience and the next experience will bring, so that we can never stop evolving.
Okay, we will continue this fascinating conversation with Sarah. Wow, she is the author of A Hypnotist Journey to Atlantis. So you can go check out her website if you want to get more information, and the book, and that's theholistichuhypnotist.com. So we're going to take a quick break in this vortex. We'll be right back. This is Alan B. Smith for Paranormal Now on the Mystic Lounge YouTube channel, rebroadcast on the UNX network. I'll see you all on the inverted upside down. This coffee is delicious. Is that a UFO? I'm actually seeing a UFO. This coffee is awesome. That's why they call it alien coffee bean. Is this even made on Earth? Hey y'all. Paranormal Now will be syndicated on the UNX network, the new mainstream, where you can find your favorite hosts and shows on the cutting edge of ufological and paranormal news and topics. Listen for Paranormal Now rebroadcast on the X at 2 a.m. EST Fridays, 11 p.m. PST Thursdays at unxnetwork.com. Welcome back to Paranormal Now. This is Alan B. Smith. Thank you for hanging with us tonight. For all the podcast listeners, if you want to jump over to youtube.com/Mystic Lounge, you can watch us live every Thursday at 9 a.m. 9 a.m. I would definitely not be here at 9 a.m. At 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'm really enjoying my conversation with Sarah Breskman Cosme. Sarah, if you had a choice to do any other supernatural research aside from this, what would it be?
Oh gosh, I mean, I'm so happy with doing this. I can't tell you how excited I am to work every day because I never know what they're going to share with me. Like, what kind of ancient secrets am I going to learn next? And I just feel that if people just knew even a quarter of some of this information, they'd be so much less worried about their life. They'd be so much less stressed because I hear just this knowledge from this universal consciousness. And I know it's so profound and it greatly helps my clients. So that's one of the reasons I'm so passionate about sharing it.
And because there are changes, and that's what's really interesting. You don't keep doing something unless you see some kind of result. When people come to you for past life regression, is it for addiction? Is it for PTSD? What are the most common issues, for lack of a better word, that you come across?
Usually, I would say people come for health issues because it's so easy to heal in sessions like this. Because essentially, the body is just a messenger. So the body's sending out a message through whatever illness or issue the person has. And once you go inwards and you really journey into yourself, you can find out exactly what's going on with yourself. I mean, just for instance, I thought this was so fascinating. I had this client and she had been trying to lose weight for a really long time. And she had tried juice fasts, different diets. I mean, there was something obvious was going on and it wasn't her diet. And so she came in for a session. Now, normally when a client comes in for weight issues, most of the time the subconscious will say, oh, the weight is for protection. It's subconsciously protecting them from, people or their environment, or sometimes even their internal organs. Maybe they're eating a food that they're highly allergic to and they have no idea until they go under hypnosis. But this time was different. This time the higher self said, oh, the reason she can't lose weight is because she doesn't go outside without her contacts. And I thought, whoa, that's a different answer. I've never heard that. I was like, why is that? And the higher self said, because she needs to soak up some of the sun, some unfiltered sunlight. And it's essential for everybody right now, especially with what's going on in the planet, because we're being bombarded by this really beautiful consciousness, this light that's coming through the sun, and the sun is a portal. So it's information, and this information goes through our unfiltered eyes straight to our pineal gland, and then it's unlocking all these codes within people. And so her higher self said that because she's not going outside without this, with her contacts on, that she's not getting this, and that they wanted her to come see me, and this was going to be the catalyst for that, so that she would learn this information.
Well, that almost sounds like there was, I forget the documentary, but it was about people who like stare into the sun and like apparently don't eat. I don't know how true that actually is. I don't think it's ever been really verified. But the idea is like there's just energy that you can absorb through the sun and just live off of that.
Well, that's interesting because some of the Lemurians that did escape Lemuria went to Mount Shasta. So they traveled by boat for about 2 months, and they ended up in California, and they worked their way into the mountain of Mount Shasta. And when they were in there, there were these very special crystals within this mountain that acted almost as like a converter. So as they bathed with this crystal frequency, they were able to raise their vibration enough so that they didn't need to eat. So that's really fascinating about that documentary, because that's what essentially we do on other planets. As we raise our vibration, we evolve out of the need to eat. So I can see how that would be possible.
But is it? Because it's just protons. It's
Right.
UV rays. I don't understand how that could even work scientifically, like how do you get
There's so much
calories
power.
and
I know.
protein and
I know. Gosh, I'm gonna have to ask, but there's so much power that you can absorb now from the sun. And so the higher consciousness said just a little bit. They didn't say to stare into the sun, but they said it would benefit anyone right now, especially right now, to do that
yeah,
because
yeah.
they'd actually be unlocking different sequences within their DNA that will activate these abilities that are making a comeback.
Yes, and you don't want to get burnt either.
Right.
But I agree with you 100% that time spent in the sun is good for the spirit, for sure. I grew up near the beach, and sun and salt water was like it was therapy. It was always I always felt better after a dip in the ocean and some exposure to the sun. Did you mentioned earlier that when you were younger, you said you were overweight. Did that change with past life regression, or did that change occur earlier?
No. So what happened to me was 2 months after I went to college. So I
Hmm.
went to college to become a psychologist because that's what I really wanted to do. I was going to save the world. Everyone was going to be healed by me. You know.
Are you
So
still working at it?
no.
No.
Oh no. Now I realize people heal themselves.
Okay.
But I'm just a facilitator, just a
You're sure.
humble messenger. But 2 months after I started college, I went back to my family's house for Thanksgiving. And there's smear that you see when you walk through my family's house. And I'd only been gone for a couple months. And I walked back in and my jaw just dropped. I mean, I realized that while I was away at college, I had lost a ton of weight. And then as I stared at myself, because in the dorm room, I only saw like just my face, really. I hadn't really noticed. I hadn't really been paying attention,
Mm.
but I had lost a considerable amount of weight in just a couple months. And then I noticed it hit me that I had forgotten to have all of my problems. And when I stared at myself and thought, what did I do? Because I was in therapy for like most of my young adult
I see.
life. And
Okay.
here I go away for just a couple months and I felt completely healed. And I realized that
Wow.
since I had changed my environment, what had happened was I had changed my thought patterns. And because I changed my thought patterns, I had changed my whole life because I had been on these different thought patterns when I was in my family's house that I wasn't quite aware of. And then when I realized how my different thought patterns could change my life, I've never been the same since. I really realized that, wow, I just have to change my thought pattern to change my
So
life.
that seems to line up with the idea that when people are highly stressed, the body purposely holds on to fat
Right.
reserves, right? So
Right.
is
Right.
there a correlation between your experience and that?
Well, I think definitely because I think the body is holding on to different patterns as well, different thought patterns. It just is ready for the fight or flight mode and it stays in that mode to be prepared. And so it's just changing the thought patterns, calming the body and getting the body used to a different pattern that would really
Yeah.
greatly help a person because we forget that we have these patterns going on all the time and we get stuck in this repeating pattern. Like you wake up and you're just always like on the go in that feeling of anxiety. And really just by taking some time to focus and center yourself and changing your pattern, it would really benefit you.
Genghis Khan in a YouTube chat says, "Right on, Sarah. I used to suffer from stinking thinking."
Yeah.
um, but that's it's a really it seems almost too simple. Um, just that
Yeah.
you get into a healthier mindset, and that you'll suddenly lose weight. But I mean, there are other factors,
Of
aren't there? I mean, that
course.
the depending on where you live, what type of food you're exposed to can affect your body. So I guess I'm always worried, like, because I don't want someone to think, oh, if I just start thinking positively, boom,
Right.
I'm gonna
No.
lose. Right. So
Right. So for me, I was protecting myself. I was just so highly sensitive when I was younger. And just I felt the need to protect myself in my environment at the time. And when
Mhm.
I went out of my environment, I didn't need that protection. I didn't need to keep creating that thought of protection, basically. So yes, it's a lot more than just think positively, that's for sure. But in my case, when I came back home, I was just astounded. I had no idea that just by changing my environment, my thought patterns, for me, I just had changed so much. And that really shook me. I didn't realize how easy it was. Simple for me. For me, it was simple.
Yeah, that's awesome. And in a way, you were kind of lucky,
Yes.
because and maybe that's part of the power of it, because it's almost like, how much thought do I put on the problem to solve it, versus letting go, so that I can kind of, you know, so it's like you got to put in some work and then let it do its thing subconsciously. Let the
because
mind heal, right?
because I had been in therapy and I would talk about my problems over
Hmm.
and over and over again. And sometimes they would even get worse. And then here I stopped thinking about them and they got better.
But isn't it the nature of how you talk about the problem? Like, there's talking about it is
Yes.
one thing, but how you talk about it to a therapist is another thing.
Oh, definitely. Definitely.
Do you think that therapists and psychology um, understand that? Because I think the general impression is, when you go to a therapist, you just offload and just
Right.
talk and talk and talk about all these things, and then where does the therapist come in to help? Well, okay, so
Well,
we've recognized that
right.
you have all these problems, and just listening to them is not going to be enough.
Right. And what I really like is getting to the root cause of the issue because it can be so different for so many different people. I mean, sometimes people are just allergic to a food. Like gluten's a big thing. A lot of people are allergic to gluten who don't
Yep.
really realize that they're so allergic to gluten and they don't realize that their body's creating inflammation,
Hmm.
and so it's protecting their vital organs. And sometimes it's as simple as not eating certain nuts, even.
Yeah, it might be even a combination of things. Like, in
Oh,
America, it's
definitely.
so hard to find bread that doesn't have sugar in it. And I
Right.
wonder sometimes if it's that combination between gluten and bread that exasperates an issue.
Well, what's really fascinating is that,
Exacerbates.
what's fascinating is that people with multiple personalities can have different allergies.
Hmm.
So much of it is the mind because you can have one person with multiple personalities and one personality will be allergic to nuts, highly allergic, and one part of them will not.
Well, the people do change as they get older. Their allergies. Some
They
people get
do.
allergies as they get older, and that's kind of a mysterious thing. And to me, that one, you can say, well, it's just aging. The body is maybe less capable of dealing with its environment, but I don't know. I kind of feel like there is
Sometimes it's
a mental
resistance.
aspect of it.
There
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
Sometimes it's resistance to certain things. I mean, for some people, they didn't want to have a dog, and then they get a dog, and so all of a sudden they
yeah.
have allergies to that dog. Or,
Right.
it can be so many different things for so many different people. But I had one client that had severe allergies, and she couldn't. Oh my gosh, it was just ruining her life. And so when
Mm.
she went back in regression, she regressed back to a time where she was an extraterrestrial, and she crash landed on Earth and did not have anybody to come to her rescue. She developed allergies to the Earth
Mhm.
planet, and then she realized that's where they originated for that person. So that was really fascinating.
That's where allergies originated. What, in that genetic
No,
line, or was it
for that person, for
for that
that
person? Okay.
particular person,
Uh,
that's where they originated for her.
Gotcha. Jingus says, quote, "The Cambridge Dictionary defines stinking thinking as a bad way of thinking that makes you believe you will fail, that bad things will happen to you, or that you are not a very good person." Oh, I think a lot of people play these thoughts in their mind over and over every day.
Yeah, definitely.
How does past life therapy help that?
Well, definitely. When you get to the root cause, when you get to understand your true self and your nature, you can really uncover so much about yourself. And
Hmm.
then you can totally redesign your life in whichever way you want because you have access to that knowledge. But past life regression, seeing
Yeah.
a different lifetime, oftentimes you'll be shown a different lifetime that completely correlates to your current lifetime. And that's why your higher consciousness shows you that. So whatever issue a person comes in with, their higher consciousness will oftentimes show them a lifetime that correlates with whatever is going on in their current lifetime, just so they can see.
Can you give us an example of what that might be? So someone has an issue, they see a past life, and by connecting to that, how does that actually help their issue?
Well, okay, I'll give you an example. I had this one
Okay.
client who felt very suicidal, and she just felt very depressed.
Mhm.
And so she came in for a regression, and she regressed back to a time period in the 1800s where she had lived with this she was a man in that lifetime, had lived with his wife and had a beautiful relationship, but his wife passed. And so he wanted to be with his wife, so he killed himself. And as soon as he killed himself and left his body, he went back to the afterlife and met up with his wife. And he said, "Oh, great, now we can be together." But his wife looked at him and said, "No, you have to repeat everything. I already learned all my lessons. You have to go back and do all of this again."
Oh my
So
gosh.
through this information, my client was able to see, that wasn't the answer, that suicide wasn't the answer, that you ultimately have to complete what it is that you set forth to do. And also, she had to really embrace her true purpose in that lifetime and to stop, being afraid.
Yeah, so we're talking about reincarnation, right?
Right.
And how long does it go until we've learned something or all
Right.
things?
History in general, all of us, we keep repeating lessons until we learn, until we complete the lesson. So
Mhm.
history just repeats itself cyclically until we learn the lesson, basically. It's a never-ending
A,
experiment.
a singular lesson or a multiple
Oh,
lessons?
multiple. We all come in with so many different lessons because life on Earth is a game. So, I mean, according to the subconscious,
Well, so
this
then
is a game for experience.
where are the modern enlightened ones? Because after billion or millions of years or tens of thousands of years, like you would think there would be more, right?
Right.
I mean, and my follow-up question to that is why are in most cases are the enlightened ones male in our history as we understand it?
That's a really good question. But even in Lemuria, they had a group of men that were part of this group called the Nakal Brotherhood, and they would pass ancient knowledge. It was just their tradition. And they were, they would live almost like monks. They wouldn't mate or anything like that, but they would just carry this information. And they became the very, very wise ones that would store this information and carry it throughout their generations.
I have a theory that it's again maybe history writing people out. That there were more enlightened people, that women, but history just decided let's not talk about that. Let's not follow that person because we're in a patriarchal society, so why not? Let's look for the guy who's smart, right? Like, I
Right.
definitely think that's
Right.
true. There are people today that I find very wise and but not walking on water.
Right.
Is that a fantasy or did that happen?
Did walking on water happen? That's a really great question. I don't know, but I think that anything is possible. I mean, it's totally quite possible.
Well, I guess
I
if
think.
multiple extraterrestrials have crashed here, and set up camp, then sure. And that leads me to another question. Even in the modern era, for those who study ufology, there are a multitude of alleged crash UFOs. Is what's going on? Like, why are extraterrestrials continuously crashing on our planet for tens of thousands of years?
Well, during the time when these founders arrived, it was a one-way mission that they weren't told about. It was to get them to stay and basically assist the population.
Okay.
They weren't supposed to return to their home planet, but they didn't know at the time. Apparently their breathing mechanisms failed, and then they crashed.
Wow.
I have countless clients that remember crashing. So it seems as if there were many, many crashes in order to create this one-way mission for these beings to kind of intermingle amongst the population here and to interbreed and create hybrids.
In the past life regressions, is there any vision of what happened to the technology? Why it's completely gone? Why we can't find it?
Oh, the ancient technology, because we've already
Mhm.
proven ourselves not to be able, we can't handle it. We've already proven that. So it's been taken
Really?
away. Yeah.
See, I was expecting you to say it was just sunk down to the ocean, biodegraded, and it's
No.
gone. So what does that mean? That means what? Somebody came and interfered with society,
There's
and
a lot of interference constantly. I mean, even when you like according to people, when there's like a nuclear test site, there'll be a lot of extraterrestrial
Sure.
visitations. I mean, they're not going to let anything happen to their experiment. We're ultimately what they're, watching. So there's there's interference, definitely.
So they're interested in us. They're interfering with us.
Well, they are us.
Us in the sense of a spirit, or us in like biologically?
Us in that we're all part of this one consciousness, so
I
to
see.
speak. Like when a person leaves their body, I've
Mhm.
asked, is there any difference between a soul that leaves a human body and an extraterrestrial soul?
Mhm.
And the answer is no. Each time it's no. So I was like, well, can a human then go to a different planet?
Mhm.
And only if they've raised their consciousness to a certain level. But yes, there's absolutely no difference between anyone's soul.
Do we have a reincarnation relationship with pets?
Oh, yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Really?
Pets always come into people's lives to teach them something, or it's not the other way around. It's not the human saving the pet. It's the pet saving the human.
Oh,
That's what
our
I
cat
always-
would agree with you.
Aw. Yeah, definitely. I mean,
Yeah.
you could travel for lifetimes and lifetimes. And who knows, maybe your cat was even a person at one time, but they come in, just to be with you, just to help you. Maybe they make you spend time relaxing or whatever it is. Sometimes, oh my gosh, sometimes when a person's getting advice from their higher self, it'll be spend more time with your pet. Sit
Interesting, yeah.
and communicate with your pet and spend more time, and that will benefit you because your pet is ultimately there as a gift, because all pets are gifts.
Okay, so is past life regression a sort of panacea? Does it cure everything psychologically? I mean, what are the full benefit range of past life regression?
Well, it's just amazing. But Dolores Cannon's method is a little bit different than a regular past life regression, in that a regular past life regression, you just regress a person back to a past life, and then you find out how it's relevant to your current life. But a quantum healing hypnosis technique, Dolores Cannon method, is different, and that you bring the person, you regress them and then bring them to the very deepest level of trance, and then you access their all-knowing subconscious. And in that way, there's nothing that you can't do. There's nothing you can't find out. There's no healing you can't accomplish. Although sometimes people come in with different challenges that they would like to experience, which is really strange. Like, why would anybody come in and want to experience a challenge? But ultimately, it's for their soul's growth, and they choose this for whatever reason. It's part of their soul's expansion.
And this soul's expansion, what's the purpose of that?
Oh my gosh. So I was curious too. Why would anybody want all these experiences, like the sad ones, the good ones? And what they said is it's like this thumb drive of experiences. You want to collect as many experiences as possible. You actually want these experiences. You want to be murdered. You want to be, you know, you don't want to be like happy. You want to be sad. You want all these experiences, because when you get to the other side and you leave your earthly life, you're so grateful for these experiences. Like on other planets, when other people go back in time or remember or just have a parallel life on a different planet, it's blissful. Some other planets, not all. It's blissful always. And there's so much beauty there, but there's no challenge. There's no ups and downs. And for these beings, they like to incarnate in a physical form to experience these challenges because this is exciting.
Yeah.
Everybody wants to the challenge of coming to Earth, because you get to really feel your emotions, and you don't feel that so much on these other planets. It's just blissful and boring, as they say. I mean, you can manifest everything instantly on some of these other planets. And while that seems wonderful, you don't realize the depths to these experiences, how great it is that you find the love of your life because you didn't have it, or how great it is to like have a pet because you didn't have one before. It's just these things are set up that way on this planet, because on all planets there's different laws, but on this planet, it's the law of duality. So that's what you sign up for when you come on the Earth planet.
It's like the opposite of religion in a way, where religion often says, if you do such and such things, you'll be punished and go to hell for eternity. But what you're saying is, I guess you could come into this lifetime and be a horrible person and do horrible things, and your soul will have a chance to come back and learn again. Or
well, it's really interesting, because sometimes some of the people that are the meanest to you have agreed to do that. They didn't want to do that, but they've agreed to be so mean to you because they knew that it would teach you something in your life. And you decide with these soul groups for some of them to come back and ultimately be the catalyst for you to grow in a certain way. So a lot of times when you leave this body and you go to the other side, you realize that, oh my gosh, that person that I thought I hated was actually one of like your best soul family friends, who just did that as a cure, a courtesy to you.
Well, it sounds a little bit like Judas to Jesus.
Yeah, I mean,
right? I mean, he's doing the one deed that's like just total betrayal. I mean, horrible, right?
yeah,
But
yeah.
according to the plan, he was doing the higher work. I guess to me, there's a slippery slope there, because it's like I would be afraid that some people might go, oh, well, then I can do whatever I want. And I'll just get another shot in the next lifetime, and I can hurt people and I can damage myself. So how do you have that conversation and take it to the next step?
Ultimately, and it's really fascinating, but ultimately when you leave your body and you go back into the in-between, you review your lifetimes, and everything that you do to somebody else, you feel that. You feel every single thing that you did. So anything that you do that benefits somebody, it comes back to you in such a magnified way, but the same goes for every harmful thing you did. And you get to feel it through their eyes, how that affected you, how it affected them. So if you can choose to be kind or be mean, just remember that it's not so fun when you get to the other side.
Right. And it might get tiresome, right? And I think some of us, come into this lifetime and very quickly become kind of tired. So how do you revitalize? How do you, some people lose the excitement for life.
Oh, well, I mean, I think just remembering who you really are, and that you're really not just this physical body. You're in an ancient group that's just been doing this for over and over again. And just to remember that every experience is beautiful. I mean, it doesn't matter really what you're doing. You can't do this wrong. You really can't do it wrong. there's no such thing as time, so you can come back and do it again. Although many people would like to graduate from this level and go to a different level, but there's nothing, you can't do this wrong.
Well,
You always have a chance.
but that's what some Buddhists would say, is that or Hindus just say, yeah, you can speed this process up here and now. Do this meditation, focus on mindfulness, and tap into the ethereal realm. Do you believe that that's possible, that we can do that and escape this realm?
I do believe that, definitely, but I don't think we're supposed to, because we're here. We signed up for this full experience, and this is amazing. I mean, there's so much help on our planet right now for all of us, and they want us to experience this, and they don't want to tell us exactly what's going to happen, because they say it's like they don't want to give away our Christmas presents, before Christmas. Like, so they know how special this time is. Although it's a time of chaos, it will also be a time of uniting, will also be, in the end, very beautiful, experience.
That is the paradox. Charles Darwin, when he was observing bird life, he's like, all those beautiful chirps and different behaviors that we see and we appreciate, those are birds fighting. Those are territorial calls. Those are mating calls. And he's like, it's a rough world. Like it's and then you have Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's like, the universe, was formed out of explosions and collisions of violent universe, and yet life's beautiful. Like, I love the sound of birds, right?
Right.
So there is this weird contradiction to appreciating life, even when there are all these like really heavy aspects to it that and that's why I think that, like you were saying, the challenge makes sense. For some reason, we're designed in such a way that challenge helps us thrive. So whether we challenge ourselves or life challenges us, that's kind of when we push ourselves. But if meditation's sort of like a cheat in a way, or to enlightenment, isn't past life regression then also a cheat to enlightenment? Because if I can heal super fast and like get through all those issues, then maybe in the next lifetime I don't have to deal with all that.
Totally.
So you're helping people cheat, Sarah.
That's me. But it's so valuable just to go inwards anyway, just to be quiet with yourself, even if you don't really know how to meditate, or go out into nature and try to listen to nature, because the consciousness of the earth is growing stronger, just like we're growing stronger with our consciousness. So is the earth, and it's communicating with us. And what I've been told is we're supposed to start communicating with it, to really start to communicate with our environment, because it's constantly trying to get our attention and constantly trying to communicate with us. So we can ask it questions like, where should I, plant this, or where should I do that? And it will answer you in ways.
What comes first, communicating with it or communicating with each other? Because we're not the best at communicating as a species, and that's why we have so many problems, especially on a large scale.
Well, it's really interesting how these other extraterrestrials do it, where they're shocked into knowing that we're all one. But essentially, if you kind of look at everybody as if they are you, kind of helps you see things from a different perspective, because that's essentially, we're all like a big, vast ocean, but just different water droplets in this big ocean.
Okay. What is enlightenment? If any of the past life regressions have revealed anything, what is that state?
Well, no, okay, this is what they've said. Enlightenment is understanding yourself as God. So on other planets, like like Arcturus, say, as a collective, they worked their way up and they came to know themselves as
Mhm.
source. So each person is source, but you go through so many trials and tribulations, belief and not belief. But to understand yourself as source, then you are ultimately enlightened. When you fully grasp that concept, then there's
Mhm.
no need for you to incarnate on, especially this planet. If you fully grasp that concept, you
Mhm.
would probably ultimately leave right now. I mean, that is
You
enlightenment
so by fully grasped,
by
that's
fully
that's
grasping.
different than you and I sitting here talking about it and
Right,
believing it.
right,
Okay.
right. Yes, by fully embodying, by grasping that, you would know
Mhm.
yourself completely as source. And then there would be no need to incarnate.
And then what happens?
Then you're just part of the all.
Are you still
Well, the Arcturians have done this, apparently, according to people under
the
hypnosis. The
Octarians, the
Arcturians,
extraterrestrials?
extraterrestrials on a place called Arcturus, have learned through millennia that they are source. So they have no need for any duality whatsoever. They have no need for any kind of lesson which teaches them that they are source. They are already very enlightened, yet they still have very advanced technology.
How
So,
many species are coming here to visit us?
gosh, I don't know how many, many, many. But what's interesting is sometimes that the Arcturians say that they are the future versions of ourselves, just like sometimes gray extraterrestrials claim they are the future of ourselves. So it depends on which
Yeah.
timeline, which future you're on, which path you're on ultimately.
Okay, so that's not metaphorical.
Mm-mm. They are human. They are human. Just that's what happens to us when we've evolved down this spiritual journey
Mhm.
in the future, in the millennia, because all time is happening now. So they're essentially us in the future, coming back to us to
Okay.
communicate with us. Arcturians are us, but in the certain timeline in the future, if we go down this beautiful path. Now, the gray extraterrestrials are us. They're humans who have lost the Earth planet and need to live on a ship within the future. Sorry if that's way too confusing.
No, no, no. It's I'm taking it in because some people do theorize that UFOs are actually time travelers.
Oh, yeah, it's really easy to time travel because they use different black holes and segues, and they have the universe mapped out in such a way, and they could also uh, change around timelines and stuff like that. So they can easily travel through time. That's sometimes when people are being contacted by
Mhm.
extraterrestrials, they'll change time a little bit. So they'll put people back in their beds and they won't really notice that much time has gone when actually a lot of time has passed.
Have you had any kind of contact with an extraterrestrial in a past life regression? A
Oh,
communication of any kind?
um, yeah. Um, Many times. Me personally, I have. I did a regression and I went back to a different planet where there were all these really tall beings. I really don't know what kind of extraterrestrial they were, but they were
Mhm.
tall and they were kind of whitish. They were like see through and whitish, and they had really black,
Hmm.
dark eyes. And they were just very compassionate. And I said, I'm going to leave and go to Earth because I'm going to teach humanity compassion because that's my superpower. And so I got into my little travel sphere, and that's about it. But I remember the planet was very pink and purple, and it didn't have plants. So I
It
thought that
didn't
was
have
really
plans.
didn't have any plants on it. It
Oh,
was
I could not go to that planet. There's
no,
no
I
way. No
know.
way.
It was very like light. It wasn't very dense, It was
Yeah.
kind of like bouncy where you kind of floated on that planet. It wasn't. So it's very different, but it was beautiful though.
This sounds beautiful. Yeah, it seems to be most, trips to space, whether it's through the mind or a near-death experience or whatever it is, always seems to be very transportive and beautiful. I just want to give a quick shout out to Race Hobbs from the UNX Network. He's the producer over there and program director, and the voice that you hear at the beginning of this show, the voice of the universe, Race. All right, so is there all these past life regressions? You use the word God. Do they believe that there is a monotheistic God? What does that term mean to you from the research that you've done working with these people?
What it means to me is all of our collective, our consciousness. So essentially, if you take all of the universes as one big whole, that's what I mean. That's source. That's everything, because everything that you see is apparently source. Everything.
Everything. Okay.
So it's everything.
So when you say I am God, you mean that literally?
Yes, we are source. Yes.
You can understand how that would be really offensive to a lot of people.
I don't mean to be offensive. This is only what I hear.
Yeah. No, I just mean to their beliefs, their faith.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm sure. I know exactly how it is when your belief system is challenged. So feel free to take it or leave it. But this is just what I hear.
Or of course, people can pick up your book and read more about it. So everyone listening, the website for Sara is theholistichuhypnotist.com, and I'll go ahead and I'll drop that in the comment section again. So do you have any other topics that you're fascinated with that you want to write? And then I'll follow up. We'll talk a little bit more about the Sphinx, because I'm very curious about that.
Speaking of different planets, I had a bunch of women that were postmenopausal that would come in for a session because they felt pregnant. And they went to their doctors, and their doctors did a scan. They couldn't find anything on the scan. So some of these women were told they were, just anxious, or it was part of menopause, or there was some problem with them, and they were prescribed different medications. One was prescribed Ativan and just told there was nothing they could do. So they eventually found their way to me, and which is interesting because I had 4 people like this. And so as they went under hypnosis, they realized that they were in fact pregnant because they were seeding a different Earth. So apparently we always have to have a backup planet. So there's another backup planet that's being seeded right now. And some people who leave their bodies are going to that planet. And this planet has lots of beautiful plants, but it's very different. It has 2 moons. It's bouncy. It's less dense. And a lot of these hybrid children are on this other planet that are ready to become the guides for this new planet. Now, not everybody is going to this planet, only a certain group. And it's people apparently that are that do not have any of this, who do not carry with them this frequency of this fear frequency. So on this other planet, they're trying as best as they can to make sure it doesn't have any of that on it.
It's interesting that you say not having that weight of the frequency of fear. So they don't have the weight. And then you said the most technical term ever, a bouncy planet. So I just imagine, I guess if you're going to a bouncy planet, don't take too much weight with you.
Yes. You're right. No.
So I have to ask you about what secrets does the Sphinx keep?
Oh my gosh, there's so much stored within the Sphinx. I mean, the Sphinx is like a record keeper. It magnetizes and holds and broadcasts out every single thing that happens on our planet. And it broadcasts out to other planets where it keeps track of us. And it's like a communication system. So everything that happens is being stored in the Sphinx. It's like a record keeper. And this Sphinx was built on very special rock. And this rock apparently came from somewhere within the cosmos and embedded itself on the Earth planet. And so when extraterrestrials came down to see the population, they were looking for different places that had this special rock because they knew they needed a generator almost to store information within it. So that's why they built the Sphinx. But most of the time was spent building the tunnels deep underneath the Sphinx. Not very much time was spent building this, at the time, a lion-like facade of the Sphinx. Because
For so long, people have suspected that there's something under there.
Because there's a lot of information under there, but it can only be accessed when you've reached a certain level of consciousness. So
and it's been accessed.
you can definitely access it, but you can't access it with your consciousness. You have to access it by widening your mind, so to speak, by kind of like raising yourself to a different frequency, to a different vibration, if that makes sense. You can't just go, if you were to go down into the tunnels, you wouldn't be able to access that information unless you kind of connected with that energy and you were at a certain level of frequency.
So it's like a storage device of information and a transmitter.
It is.
So what does that mean? So all around the planet, we're all living our lives, and somehow that information is being picked up by the Sphinx?
Yes, it's being picked. But the Sphinx isn't the only structure that does this. There's other structures, but they've been like eroded. So you don't know that they're like the Sphinx, but they're very powerful, just like the Sphinx. And the Sphinx has a consciousness, apparently.
Are some of these structures underwater?
That's possible. Some of them, I mean, they're all over the world. They're also receiving this information, every single thing that's happening, and broadcasting it out as well.
How come we're not picking up on that when we're scanning, when we're doing thermospectral analysis of rocks and stones and mounds and X-rays? How come we're not seeing? Because we can scan South America, right? Like they can scan now with LiDAR and radar and find these like three-dimensional structures underneath the vegetation.
Well, maybe they just don't know what they found.
Okay, so you said it's conscious. Does that mean we could consciously?
It's conscious. You can consciously connect with the Sphinx. It has a personality.
That's amazing. Wow. And what does that feel like?
Oh my gosh. So one of my clients did that. And I was asking the Sphinx questions, or the personality of the Sphinx. And it was interesting, the information that came back. It just said, I am you. And I'm, basically delighted to have a part in this experiment and fulfilling its purpose, basically. It didn't have like emotions, so to speak, but just, it was very just, like it understood its purpose. It was happy to do that. Yeah.
So it sounds almost like an advanced AI of a sort.
That's a really interesting perspective.
And did they indicate how this technology is possible? Like you were saying with the Lemurians, they had crystals that they used. How does the Sphinx and these other objects function?
The objects within
how does that technology work? Yeah, is that crystalline structure that we're not seeing, or?
So this is all extraterrestrial technology that is very highly advanced, because the Sphinx was built by extraterrestrials.
So basically what you're saying is we don't get it.
Right.
Yeah.
And we're not going to. It was so interesting as I was getting a lot of information about the Sphinx. My sessions were interrupted a bunch of times. Each time I got too close to certain information, a group of beings would interrupt my session and say, you're getting too close to confidential information. We have to interrupt this session now.
Yeah. We're talking about a lot of things tonight that are considered, wild and out there. But for me, the hardest thing for me to wrap my mind around is healing physically, through, hypnotherapy or or anything, meditation, because so many times if I have an ache or I have something, or recently got really sick, I was like really focused, like, okay, I'm gonna use the power of my mind to heal, and that
But
thing just knocked me out. Like,
it doesn't work that way. If you can ask yourself, what is the purpose for this illness, or what is the purpose of this issue? Because the body is so literal in its messages. I mean, oftentimes things with the hands are you're grasping onto something. If it's the right hand, it's usually you're holding on too tightly to something right now, or the left hand holding on too tightly to the past, or mobility issues with your feet. Are you on stable ground? Are you moving in the right direction? If it's a problem with your right foot, or even one of those mobility joints, the body is so literal in its communication. If you just think about the literal message, just like with the eyes, sometimes people have blurred eyesight because they don't want to see the world clearly because it's very difficult to look at. If you think about the body as a literal messenger, then you can literally find out what's going on with your body. But sometimes with getting like a sickness or something where you're, in bed for a little bit, maybe you needed to go inwards. Maybe you needed a rest, whatever it is. But you can just ask yourself, what is the purpose of this? What do I need this to teach me? Do I need this sickness? Do I need this for some reason? Is there a purpose behind it? And just try to use those thoughts to go inwards with those questionings. Because if you can understand what the purpose of the issue is, or the lesson maybe that you have to learn from it, and once you understand that, you can release it. You can heal it pretty quickly once you understand the purpose, the lesson, and get the messages. Like, for instance, I had this client that had a right shoulder injury, and she came in for a session because she just started this cleaning job, and her higher self said they gave her that injury. And I thought, wow, why would you do that? Why would you give someone a right shoulder injury? And they said, because she just started this cleaning job and she's not supposed to be doing that. That's not her purpose in this lifetime. Her purpose in this lifetime is to be a singer. She came in with this purpose. That's what she needs to be doing. And then because she's so off her path, they gave her this right shoulder injury. They also said that she told them that if she gets off her path, to give her a clear sign. So this is her sign. She's going down the wrong path. So I said, okay, what does she need to do? And they said, well, she needs to be a singer. Coincidentally, everybody in her life is in a band. So she could literally just go do this because she will help heal people through her voice. So I saw her later, a couple weeks later, and she was in a sling. And I said, what happened? She said, oh, well, I was too afraid to do the singing. So this is basically sometimes how the body's communicating with us. Maybe we're off our path, or maybe it's just something that we're doing that we're not aware of. And so the body's sending us a message. Like, for instance, lower back pain sometimes is a feeling of being unsupported, whether it's unsupported by yourself or unsupported by others. And so if you can figure out how can you feel more supported, you can release this. Or like cancer, even sometimes cancer is anger that you haven't ever dealt with. And this anger just comes out in the form of a cancer. What's fascinating is teeth are considered time capsules. So sometimes you can get cavities because trauma has never really been dealt with, and it works its way into the teeth. So, the body is simply just a messenger. Nothing happens by accident. Accidents don't happen by accident. Everything is just trying to help us on our journey, really. Help us on our path.
It's so weird. Maybe it's coincidence, but as I've gone on my journey and have gotten better psychologically and overcome a lot of stuff, I have less cavities than when I was younger.
There you go.
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
And what you say to yourself can affect cavities. If you're constantly telling yourself that you're a terrible person or that you're ugly or whatever, it might show up as cavities because you're creating chaos in your mouth.
Yeah, it's so fascinating. I mean, there are legitimate instances that medical science can't explain, where there are spontaneous healings of some sort, a tumor that just dissipates, and there's speculation as to maybe the body just figured out how to suddenly reduce this tumor that was growing. Um, but it happens on occasion, and you have to wonder, did something align in the mind body system where
Well,
the body figured out how to deal with this thing.
Well, actually, it happens a lot in these sessions. And that's why quantum healing hypnosis technique is very popular, because it's easy for a person to come in and heal their body after just one session. I'm not just the only one that experiences that. You can ask countless quantum healing hypnosis technique practitioners.
Sure, yeah. Oh my God, there's so much more I could ask you. This is so fascinating, but we are at the end. Sarah, thank you so much for being here with me tonight.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you could leave us all with one thought, anything you would like, what would it be?
Well, I just getting back to Lemuria really quick, if I could leave you with one thought, that
Mhm.
if you have memories from these time periods, you're not alone. So many of us are back again now, ready to just release this trauma and move past this. And I would just say, find your tribe, because everybody else is looking too.
All right, those are great words of wisdom. Definitely finding your tribe, and we have a paranormal tribe here in this digital space, and I really love that online community. The vast majority of people are just so supportive, and through all these interesting topics, we're trying to find our way through weird experiences that we had, but also in that process, I think people are trying to be better people, and they're trying to make the world a better place in our own kind of weird way. So Sarah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right, so go check out Sarah's website, theholistichuhypnotist.com. Thank you all for joining me tonight. If you enjoyed this show and any other pop-up show, Coffee and UFOs, that we do on the Mystic Lounge YouTube channel, please go to youtube.com/Mystic Lounge. Please support us however you can, whether it's through subscription, notification, comments, or likes. I would really appreciate it. Thank you all. And as always, until next time, live in the mystery.